Welcome. This is a November 21st bhyve production user call. We have Jan, Rahul, Andrew, and myself, Michael, and I have a few news items. The videos for the OpenZFS User and Developer Summit are online, and Brian's release engineering talk was extremely popular so far. And go ahead and check those out. There's a link in the document. And a number of people have pointed out this interesting article from, I believe, Stefano about migrating from Proxmox to FreeBSD bhyve using Windows guests, and he just steps through it. That is something that I have done, not necessarily Proxmox, it was actually Hyper-V, but I've seen a bunch of colleagues doing this because, well, yeah, Proxmox is very pretty. I'll leave it at that. Let's see. There was a topic that we bumped into yesterday that really got me thinking. Long ago, we had a great discussion of timekeeping in sort of virtualized and data center environments. And this is almost, this is equally simple and equally complex. Uniqueness, because in a synthetic environment like virtualized, you can have collisions between MAC addresses, UUIDs, GUIDs, SIDs, hashes, entropy, private IPs. And I had to like change my tunnel to a client because my private subnet was the same as theirs, and one of us had to suffer. But while that is a giant topic, I'd love to hear your collision stories, and you can just drop them in the list there. Like, here, I've had this thing not on the list collide. But one super simple one was, do modern operating systems sniff for a MAC address being used or in it on its subnet before launching an interface with that MAC address, or does it just YOLO try it and then watch for fallout? And if it doesn't do
You
any smart
can't,
sniffing, you can't until it's configured.
as in, you need a sending MAC address to ask anyone to respond to you. You
Well, right.
can't,
The host is
unless you use
presumably
the
running.
broadcast MAC address, but or multicast one. But
Hmm.
yeah, basically you need a unique unicast MAC source address to be a useful node on an Ethernet,
Hmm.
which means no, you can't gracefully ask someone if your intended MAC address is in use. You can do it for IP addresses. It's
Right.
built into IPv6 by
Yeah.
default, but no, if the idea is just don't do that. Hardware is supposed to have unique addresses, and for software interfaces, you're responsible for keeping
Correct.
them unique per Ethernet.
No question, but people still keep getting burned. That's just the nature of our piece. So, Jan, can you tell us about this Ethers project, which has been updated just recently? I know you mentioned it in various forms on the calls, but it looks like you
And
have
that
polished
is a
it up
little
nicely.
helper.
Whoop.
I wouldn't call it a real project. It's a little helper to record which MAC addresses have been allocated on a host so that you can give it a range of MAC addresses to allocate from, and it will either find the existing mapping, or if the range of available MAC addresses is not exhausted, allocate a new mapping. And it just uses the old ethers file format because it's so simple that it's easy to use in shell scripts and the like, and it's easy to parse. So yeah, as that. The ethers file is yeah, read. So before parsing the content of the ethers file, I'm obtaining a read log, and while writing, I upgrade that to a write log and then downgrade again. Uh, yeah,
Cool.
that's it. So because it's open synchronously, unless your file system exposes you to torn writes, it's atomic and safe to use in concurrently. It will just use the ethers file as a log file.
So, can the user override a requested prefix to work with, or does it just use
That does not
something
make
like?
sense.
So wait, no. So it's hold on. It's Look how it's a MAC address. Oh, okay, sorry. No, I'm thinking about just generating in conflicts. I'm still hung up on that. Okay, my bad.
So
Cool.
you assign a large enough, the idea is that you assign a large enough locally administered Ethernet MAC address range to a
Hmm.
host that you never have to recycle them, so that you don't have to deal with cache invalidation, because you just have 2 to the power 46 MAC addresses to pick from, and the
Yep.
locally administered unicast MAC address ranges. So yeah,
So does it
and you can
simply,
give a ridiculous number of MAC addresses to a host to burn through. You can easily give each host on your side something like, I don't know, 32-bit of MAC addresses, and it will still work.
do you generate those
Um,
separately? And they have nothing to
sorry,
do with you. At what stage do you generate those MAC addresses? Is it with this tool or at
this
the
tool
administrator brings
picks
it to the
one.
table? It picks one. Then back to my previous question, which was what prefix is
If
it
you
basing that on?
There are no real prefixes,
Well,
there are
like I'm just
ranges.
thinking to
The
well,
flat
the
namespace.
thinking of like the net app prefix that is sort of baked into the bhyve manual page,
You
etc.
pick it. You
Okay,
give it the command line. The lowercase m for the lower bound, the uppercase m for the upper bound.
got it.
So minimum and
And
maximum MAC address
all
in
right,
the
as you
normal
have,
hex format you've probably seen 1,000 times.
yep. Okay, beautiful. Any questions for
So
Jan?
you can look into the source code to see the usage string if that helps, maybe.
Yeah, and I somehow remember. Oh, here it
The
is.
IARCs
Is
probably.
that
That's the man
manual?
page, but
Yes.
yeah, the problem is that man pages are actually to read
Oh, we've all had to do it.
in source, yeah, but
Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Okay, love it.
and
Okay.
that way you can then persist your MAC address allocation to your virtual machine or container or jail or zone or whatever you want to use, so that the MAC address now lives with the virtual machine or the jail.
Hmm.
And if you move it between hosts, you just don't free it up, you move it, and everything keeps on working. And you don't need any centralized database to track it, as long as you assign non-overlapping ranges to your different hosts. And you have enough locally administered MAC addresses to pick from that's totally feasible. You could just allocate, let's say, 24 bits to each, and then pick a locally administered prefix for every host of 24 bits. So you have
Hmm.
24, no, you have 22 bits for your hosts and 24 for your whatever jails or beehive guests. And yeah,
Cool. Okay.
so you don't have to manually write that out. And the other nice thing is, because you can store it in an ethers file, is that you can use existing tools like get and ethers on FreeBSD to look it up in both directions. Of course, it's a linear scan, but it's so fast for a small file that indexing it isn't worth it.
Hmm. Okay. Love it. That said, we were discussing the our collective disdain for surprises, and it sounds like you found a surprise. So you were, if I understand you correctly, and I'm sure you'll correct me, you were nesting a bunch of data sets and you were looking for empty snapshots so that you can return to an empty state. However, you found that if you have a dirty
So
state, when you attempted to get back to empty, it did not behave exactly as you expected. Go ahead and put in your terms.
exactly. So what happens here is, to get into this state, I have to detect with my scripts that the jail is partially initialized. There are some non-directories inside that mount point, and now I can't trust it that there isn't anything malicious in there. So I ask the user, are you fine with rolling back to the empty snapshot, which is by convention a snapshot created when the dataset is created and is always empty? So with no files in it. So I do that, but when I do that, it looks like the file systems are still mounted, and they are mounted, but they are not visible. Instead, I see the directory from the topmost rolled back file system where something is supposed to be mounted inside of. But instead of seeing the file system mounted on top, I see the underlying file system, which is really confusing.
Repeat that again. You see the
So
topmost
I see the
directory.
first line in fix with print. That file system I see. And I can even write to it so that I can have a /etc directory, for example, in there. And inside of that /etc directory on the file system, which is not supposed to contain /etc, is a complete /etc after the package-based bootstrap, because it was the other one wasn't visible at that time, despite the mount output telling me that it should be visible. But it appears that as part of a rollback, some really unnatural things happen within the virtual file system layer. And now, basically, the overmounted directories, which uh, exist in the lower file system, so in the first line, for example, suddenly are no longer overmounted, but are completely accessible. And if I don't do anything about that, if I have attempted, supposedly successful, to roll back to a safe state and then try again, let's say after a network error where I failed to fetch a FreeBSD base system package or something like that. Now it is instead all installed in the topmost file system instead of being split up into multiple file systems like it should be.
Okay, so going with the
And
example that you have data sets
when
for
I then
use, go
restart that
ahead.
jail,
Yeah,
which involves unmounting all those file systems and mounting them again during the start procedure.
yeah.
Now I see them again as they should be mounted, but because the last time they weren't really accessible but hidden from access, the content which was installed is now truly hidden because there's something mounted on top of it. So now I have just empty mount points except for the top mount point, which yeah, is partly obscured by the file system mounted on top, which is not what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
That it's easy to work around with now that I know what is going on, but this workaround shouldn't be necessary. Or, and if it cannot be fixed within ZFS for reasons like, for example, that you have to keep using the same vnode for the root directory or something like that, and you can't fix it to work correctly, then it should just refuse that operation and say you have to unmount before you get to do that. Because that state is definitely never one a user wanted to see.
Yeah.
That you have in mount the output telling you that something is mounted there, but instead you see the supposedly empty directory and think, yeah, okay, so I haven't installed anything here, that's fine. But in reality, you're not writing to the mount point you assume you're writing to. Instead, you're writing to a file system further up in the mount hierarchy. So the data isn't lost, you can recover it, but it's definitely easy to lose data like that if you don't detect it. And yeah,
Okay, so you have, if
it's a
let's
nasty
just,
bug.
yeah, I want to be absolutely clear on this, and it could be either ZFS or it could be FreeBSD's VFS, but so you have, say, a user local data set and a user local Etsy data set, and inside that you have my config. You have
No, I don't
your
have those.
well,
The
for
mount
example,
points,
purely for
but if
example,
you,
okay.
I can only speak of about
Oh,
what
so,
I have here.
Okay, so the UUID is the data set.
Mhm. So, and I immediately stumble over it. You don't have to go into user local. It's enough to just use the first two lines, the /etc and the root file system.
Okay, fine.
But
I'll use your example, but it's unwieldy. I'm trying to get it down to a generic.
truncate the UUIDs to something more
I know.
reasonable.
I will do that.
That's fine. Um, just exactly, just
I know.
keep the first group.
Just one sec. I want to understand the problem. I want to make it generic to not jails, to just the ZFS
Mhm.
behavior, because I
I
can picture
mean,
this happening and people not anticipating this behavior. That's
mhm.
my point. So just one
Oh
sec.
yes.
And Andrew, you've used quite a bit of ZFS and happiness and anger. Have you done any kind of this relayering, for lack of a better term?
Uh,
No, not really. But
but have you ever done
and
a
I don't
rollback?
do I've done like one or two rollbacks, so not
Okay.
enough to even likely have seen any kind of problem with it. That said, we should probably try to test the same scenario across different ZFS type systems. So
Exactly. That's why I want to make this as
And
mind-numbingly simple an example we can do
an
is like a
example
shell
as we
script and
can.
just run it.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So even if it's
and
so, Jan, you
Michael,
happen,
and
yes.
I try to get in that it is possible that I'm only observing this behavior because I flattened the mount point hierarchy into a single level of data sets inside the jail. So I just have one data set for the jail and then one for level where all the mount points in the jail are. And for reasons I explained yesterday in the
Mm-hmm.
CFS call, they are named after UUIDs,
Mm-hmm.
which, yes, it's disgusting to look at.
I know, but yeah, I
I
see
agree.
the reasoning.
But the issue here is that I get into a state where I have mount points which should be visible, but I'm seeing what is should be underneath the mount point instead of the mounted file system, and that's yeah,
Okay,
not
so
fun.
you have empty. So I think I can force some
Yep.
formatting. Nope, it can't. I'm learning the tricks of this. I can like type there. Yes, it got the formatting. So you have then at empty here. I can type empty. So
hmm So
the data
basically, I'm
sets are
looping
all
over all the
equal
data
level.
sets
Yeah, I get that. Okay.
and then do a ZFS rollback recursive so that it gets rid of any of newer snapshots if they should exist, because maybe some automatic snapshotting tool ran in the meantime and created a newer snapshot. So it could be that there are snapshots between empty and the current state of the file system. So I roll it back to at empty.
Sure.
If the user explicitly answered the question by typing in rollback in all uppercase
Mm-hmm.
at the prompt. So there is a safety net there, um, so that it doesn't wipe data by accident.
Okay.
It's a big three-line warning message explaining what will happen if you type this and type no to abort, and anything else is just repeat the prompt. Um, so yeah.
So to be clear, all of your data sets are are one level within ZFS, but
So
they're
that is
nested at the mount points. Is that
yes,
accurate?
the mount
Okay.
points look same.
Okay.
That's just jail name and then a path inside the jail prefix.
And so the test would be if you nested those data sets in addition to mount points, presumably
So
following the mount points, it might behave differently.
I assume that the issue is related to the problem that inside the snapshot which I'm rolling back to,
Yeah.
the mount point directories do not exist because I'm snapshotting the root file system of the jail directly after creation. So while it is completely empty, only dot and dot dot implicitly inside of that. So no directory entries.
Okay.
But they are still mounted file systems. So it has to create new directories, which it does. But those new directories are now on top of what is what is already a mount point, and I don't know if that further has gone, but it's it is
Interesting. Okay, well, so for what it's worth, a little shell script that does a super simple series of these data sets and does the rollback could be helpful. Drop a little Sentinel file in there and see, do you see the correct output? I don't know, just a thought.
No, the problem is that that won't catch it.
It won't catch it? Okay, so what
No,
aspect is
because
triggering it?
you have a directory, but it is the directory you are seeing under the path /jails, name of my jail, /etc is the /etc directory on the root file system, not the one which is it's supposed to be its own mount point. So you have a writable directory, but from the wrong file system.
Oh, whoa, that just what's the word? Escalated. So you're saying you're seeing the root Etsy on a jail that you're mucking around with?
No, not the jail is the FreeBSD host, but the jail's root file system. So the first line there, that one contains a directory etc at the top level. It has to, and it should, because that's supposed to be the directory where you mount the next file system on top. But in the state after the rollback, that directory, which should never be written to, exists only so that you can mount the file system on top of a path which exists, and for that you have to have this directory. And suddenly I'm seeing that directory, despite mount telling me that the mount order is this, so that I can see in the mount -b output. But as I read that and have done for ages, is that basically, what comes lower down in the output of the mount command is mounted later and is mounted on top of anything before. But no, it's not the state I'm observing right now. The kernel tells me, there's a file system mounted. Okay,
well,
but the path where the mount point is does not resolve to the right directory. It resolves to a directory on the wrong file system.
Okay, so we're discussing a FreeBSD, in this case, base tree, which yes, happens to have a bunch of directories that you are using as selectively using as mount points, correct? Okay, so that said, when you cleanse things, you end up with empty directories. Do you need to do an M tree creation of all the desired directories, or what's that?
No, ZFS creates that empty directory on your behalf when
you
running
create
ZFS
that
mount.
Okay.
You don't have to create the directory yourself. Just running ZFS mount is enough.
Okay.
And in this case, it's doing even more because I'm assume that it isn't just creating the directory, but when I'm rolling back to a point where the mount point directory did not exist, and for me to still see that directory, there has to be some special case within the kernel side of ZFS, part of a rollback to fix that up and attempt to reconnect that. And I assume that this is not working correctly, that it, instead of just creating a directory, making the mount point visible again, just creates a directory and that's now on top of the mount point. And it's a really crazy state which is probably impossible to reach by other means.
So the mount point is a directory, and you're seeing it create a directory
Of
on
course,
top of that mounted directory or something. Keep in mind, you're
yeah.
the only one who's seen this, and I wanted to transfer that knowledge to this. So,
I've
well,
yet to try it on something other than FreeBSD current from a few days ago. So I won't have to try it on 14.1 with a different OpenZFS version.
okay.
But I assume that it is the rollback to a point before the creation of the mount point. It then creates a missing mount point directory, and that directory is now on top of the mounted file system, and the mounted file system is just inaccessible until you unmount it and mount it again.
Rollback for creating the mount point. Rollback.
Yeah, it's a little mind bender. It just completely breaks the abstraction of how you, as a Unix user, expect the semantics of file systems to look like.
No, you're onto something, and I want to understand it because I can totally picture this happening. So, or something like it, or unpredictable behavior, because FreeBSD is trying to make sense of what ZFS is telling it to do or what it desires, and maybe there's simply a bug in there in the either mount code or whatever. So, okay, let us know what you find, and if you have a way for us to test it, we can help identify if that's a bug you've encountered or what. But I see how those acrobatics will aggravate, for lack of a better term, corner cases. Anyway,
Andrew, did
cool.
that make any sense to you?
It's
Or
getting there.
Raoul, to you?
So this very last one, the rollback. Yeah, I'm visual such that laying out just a bunch of trees is with a little comment like now this is invisible to the user is most helpful. But I sense what you're
The,
doing, and all my rollbacks have been like a bit unpredictable, and I absolutely didn't do any nesting or have nested mount points
so
yet, not data sets. So
if
I
you roll
totally
back
imagine
a
there's an issue
file
in there.
system which does not contain any other mount points, you can't encounter this state. And maybe if your tree structure looks like the mount structure, it just happens to do it in the right order so that things line up. That is what I suspect could hide this bug for most users. Um, and it's also quite uncommon, I suspect, to roll back to before the creation of a mount point directory. Because if you only roll back a few snapshots, the directory node on top of which the other file system is mounted is probably already there in your file system because, oh, I deleted whatever by accident. Let's roll that back because I haven't written anything I want to preserve. And you roll it back and think, yeah, that was great. And it would probably just work.
Cool. Well,
You really have to do several uncommon things in succession.
and I'm doing a quick search of rolling back nested data sets, and do. Cool. Well, any questions for Jan? Is that clear to both of you, Andrew and Rahul? I'm obviously slowly trying to wrap my head around it. It's only like half a cup of coffee here.
I got to step away.
No worries. Okay, well, thank you, Andrew. Have a fantastic
Bye.
Friday and weekend. Bye. Okay. Doing a quick search here.
I haven't
Yeah.
found anything with just Google searches or with Perplexity, I would have to look into the OpenZFS bug tracker and
Mhm.
search for that uh, with different phrasing until I either find a duplicate report which would absolve me of reporting it again, or
Sure.
I'm convinced that I'm the first one to run into this who considering
Okay.
reporting this. Yeah.
Well, that uh, was a good mental exercise to start the day with. So anything else? I'm still wrapping up like the event and such, so I've just been busy with that. I do want to get some hacking time in, but people always have new news topics, which is good, which is good. Um,
The
yes.
FreeBSD summit, not the OpenZFS
Hmm.
summit, has also uploaded its videos.
Let me put that in there. Thank you for posting that. And that's the segmented videos as opposed to here's a full day.
Yes,
Okay, great.
I linked to the playlist in the
Yep, I know. I'm going to
signal
grab
group.
that. I appreciate that. Um, copy, copy link. Okay. The 2024 Fall BSD Summit. Videos. So yeah, that was a lovely event, and Ian's first talk was quite cool insofar as he's doing a wireless ISP and getting things like the modem driver for a new this very first one. That was quite cool. Love that talk.
So I
Kurt's
haven't seen
giveaway
all
was
of them,
insane. Okay.
but the one I found really interesting was the OSDB talk.
Yes, it was. Yes, GNN's talk.
Yes,
I That's his PhD work, and he's like, well, what if we just emit
expose
everything as,
kernel state
yep,
as virtual SQLite tables
correct.
so that you can, and the part which really blew me away was that he implements writes so that you can actually change the kernel state with
Yes,
SQL update statements.
correct. That's
That's
a great talk. Agreed.
yeah, it's
What else stood out? And if okay, I'll just say it just as kind of community oriented. Kirk's uh t-shirt giveaway and sale and history was pretty wild. And I got some pretty rare like BSD 4.3 book shirts, etc. Don't That's it. Don't tell my wife. And yeah, let's see. Does he? And GNN is like holding up shirts. Let's see if we can get. I'm trying to do this without actually playing it. So scrubbing may or may not work. Come on. Yeah, the scrub is terrible. Anyway, oh, and the original artwork from John Lasseter, etc. It was insane.
so,
Oh, here we
so
go. It's
what brought you to
that
this
kind of thing.
call? Do you have any topics you want to bring up?
Rahul.
No, I'm good. I'm listening more.
Cool. And uh Jan, where the reason I wanted to really hammer deeper on your ZFS nesting issue is that when you, I'm now starting to fully understand that your desire is to create jails so quickly that it's simply part of the jail boot process, or a better term, initialization process. And given that
Hmm.
systems can be slow to boot, let me finish. Having that extremely efficient creates many opportunities because in my weird book, having an Occam BSD jail or a VM built on air quotes boot is fascinating insofar as that is fully embracing the whole the livestock versus pets view of the world. However, it does it in an extremely enlightened way rather than just a whole bunch of tarballs that are expanded and have a nice day. So the fact that you're pushing ZFS really hard to do that is fascinating and exciting because other file systems just can't even do anything like this. So there's my
What
take
I
on
want to do is not exactly what you described. I don't
Well, I
want
want
to
to do
do the
that.
work on every start. I
Mhm.
want to do as much work as necessary to detect if I have to do the expensive step.
Nicely put.
And if so, I want to make it as cheap as possible by trying to do it once and then cloning it so that I don't
Yep.
have to, for example, do a package-based installation for every jail. Instead, I do it once for each patch level,
Mhm.
and then I can just, for the thin jails, destroy the clones and replace the clones with an already snapshotted
Sure.
installation of the right patch level, so that I don't have to move data, because the more data you have, the more inertia it has. And if you want to accelerate things, instead of just taking the brute force approach of
Mhm.
trying to buy a faster SSD and finding out that metadata operations dominate, and it's not the sequential write throughput which limits you.
Mhm.
Again, so that doesn't work. And then I want to just not move the data and still get the desired behavior out of my jails. And then I can, yeah, easily clone them, move them around.
Mhm. Okay, but at
Should
an
work.
extreme, I picture a zero trust build where the VM is built with your zero trust tools of choice and only
Yep.
applies your tiny configuration file to achieve what you want, which is just
Mhm.
something I've pictured forever. And
Yeah,
I like that you're pushing these
I'm
limits.
doing that with jails so far, but of course you
Mhm.
can run bhyve in a very small jail.
Well, regardless,
And
no,
it's on
regardless of the actual technology, it could be Zen for
Mhm.
that matter. But the fact that FreeBSD and ZFS have the infrastructure to
Mhm.
craft those things on in a short amount of time.
What we
And
have is in a way, I think, different from the way you're picturing it, because it's completely different from how OccamBSD does things.
OccamBSD can make a
And
very small
yes, I know,
VM.
but I
So
know.
we have different use cases. Don't let me have my use case.
What you're doing is you're customizing the build process to disable anything you don't really need.
Right.
What I'm doing is I'm taking the artifacts created by the normal builds from
Yep.
the upstream
Without
project
question.
releases as is, subsetting them via packages instead of building my own. I could build my own, it would work the same, but
You know,
uh,
OccamBSD can build packages, right?
I know.
I've added some simple primitives there,
And
and yes, I do want to
with one
restructure
time I
that to
tried it,
do
it didn't work out of the
additive.
box for what I wanted to do.
I
So
don't doubt
I
that.
decided that, yeah, don't want to subset my repositories. I want to subset my installations.
Oh, I like that. I don't know if it's a
So,
t-shirt quite yet, but I like that.
so what you're doing is you're creating a custom install image or other build artifact. And with package base, we don't have to, because we get 400 to 500 packages depending on FreeBSD version.
Yep.
And while there are still a few big packages which maybe eventually someone should break up into smaller packages so that we have 600 or so,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can more precisely subset which parts
Yep.
you want at a
Correct.
package level. But instead of building a custom repository for each set of packages I may want, I have one repository with all of them,
Yep.
a complete everything which is enabled by default build. And then I can just say, okay, now that I have that, which 100 packages of these, or 110 or so, of these 500 do I want to install? And that gives me a jail which is with compression about 110 megabytes.
Yep, love it.
That is a thick jail with manual pages included. It's like 120 megabytes compressed by ZFS and 220 without compression. So
I love it.
RCS.
Yep.
Using just LZ4 compression with
Yes.
up to 1 meg blocks. And that performs really well. Unlike ZSCD compression,
Yes,
which
I know
is
that you're in the
a
weeds. You're in the
little
weeds.
bit smaller,
Pull
but
up.
not worth the CPU overhead.
Yep.
It's just diminishing returns.
Okay, did I get your quotation correct? I want to subset my repositories, not my
No, I don't
installations.
want.
No, I know. So I'm asking, did I
You
get it
didn't.
correct? I know. So I'm
No, you
asking,
did
please
not get
correct
it
it.
correct.
So I'm asking, what should it read?
I want to subset my installations.
Thank you. I have them backwards. I'm
Yes.
I'm trying to multitask here. I'm doing my best.
Sorry,
Don't
it's
beat up
just,
the volunteers.
Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry. It's really just that you flipped it around
Yes,
to
I
make
did.
it
I
do
have a
what
lot going on. I'm trying to do the
OpenBSD
bookkeeping for
does.
an event that was
You're
extremely
bringing,
successful, and planning for this weekend's event. Just go easy on me.
which weekend event?
The Christmas market at the Latvian Center, of course.
Okay.
Installations, not my repositories. Thank you.
And that way I don't have to build again and again and again.
Oh, yeah, but those are completely, they're allowed to
But
coexist. People have
yes, of
different
course.
use cases. You have yours,
There's no
I have mine.
conflict here.
There's no conflict, and that's the absolute beauty of it. These tools
It's
are
just
the
that
best
different
available.
approaches have vastly different trade-offs.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, and we
what
need
is
people to
useful
understand them by
for certain
vocalizing them.
development setups, I consider completely useless for production deployments, maybe.
Unless you have some
And the
zero
big
trust
advantage
obligation only
of
achievable by building a system quickly faster than you can initialize a RAID card. I think it's fantastic. Anyway.
So the nice thing about this is now, because all of the installations are created from a complete repository, maybe a customized one, but it's a complete one.
Yep.
If I detect, once I have, in my case, jail running, that I'm missing something, I can just install it.
Yep, absolutely. No,
And the
it's
other
all
part is,
good. All
I
of it.
want to go one step further, which is where you're not going so far with tools like OpenBSD.
Yeah.
And that is, once I have the subsetted fig jails, which contain just a subset of the packages, and maybe even site-specific extra packages or whatever, now I want to snapshot those and then create thin jails by cloning them.
Cloning thick to
I
make
want
thin.
to clone the thick jail to create one or more thin jails.
Okay. Yeah.
And then basically the thin jail, which consists mostly out of cloned file systems, will on every start check if the origin of each of its read-only clones is still the origin specified in the jail configuration. And if not, it will destroy the clone because the clone does not contain anything you want to preserve. I make sure of that by keeping it read-only.
Mm-hmm.
And then I create a new clone from the right origin snapshot. And with that, I can basically do a system upgrade in milliseconds.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're getting it. That's awesome. That's very...
And
clone desired.
origin snapshot.
Origin. Thank you.
So what this means is that my clones are immutable, which works great for something like my software installed from packages, because to upgrade, I don't run package upgrade inside the thin jail. I create a new thick jail and then clone it. So what's best for deployment, I would have the thick jail with that, then multiple instances for it to make sense to have it.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing about doing it like that is that there is no way to build up technical debt in the scheme, like you normally would. You can't easily turn these thin jails into pets because there's no writable place to put it, which is preserved, because it's either a pure data directory where, okay, that's where your long-term state lives. There you can, of course, create the usual mess, but not really within the configuration, because how I envision it, the config directories will be pre-populated temp FSs. So every time I start the jail, I populate a little temp FS with /etc and user local etc, so that it starts out as a temp FS containing what was in the origin snapshot. And you can modify that if you want, or you can put files in var1 or wherever. But every time you stop the jail, these temp FSs get unmounted. The state is intentionally not preserved. And the next time you start from the same snapshotted starting point, and if you need it, which you probably will, the jail configuration will then patch as part of the starting process the configuration. For example, create a user in the user and password database, so using GUID's database, this and so on. And that is also very fast, especially on a temp FS where the fsync doesn't hurt. Yeah.
I love where you're headed with this, where I think it doesn't hurt. And then the lower levels are all read only, correct?
Yes. Slashes, the root file system, user local, and so on is all read only. And because I flattened the data sets, I don't have to create parent data sets, so that I can have the base jail of just FreeBSD come with a /user and so with a /etc and /user local etc, and then I don't have to do much with that. I can just say, okay, copy it over. And only the next level up has a user local file system, but because their packages get installed into.
Yeah.
But user local etc is not dangling around with some parent, and I don't have to slot it into the parent know that there is one, because I'm just keeping them in a flat list, and that really simplifies the automation. I don't have to do tree rebalancing insanity. Like yeah.
Okay. Well, I admire that a new air quote system could be little more than a ridiculously small configuration file, just specifying how wild you want to go with that creation of it. And I've been exploring this kind of nonsense for 2 decades now. So great work. Okay, anything else,
not
or
really
is that
bhyve
plenty?
specific.
No, per the user summit, every conversation ends up on ZFS. So you've possibly found an issue in FreeBSD's ZFS, and that would apply to jails, VMs, and sitting on your laptop in a cafe. So no, it's all important. It's all interrelated.
Yep, and it may not be FreeBSD specific.
That's also the eye-opening part. So having a little simple test would be great. And hopefully I'll find the charge cable to my Albert Dang style headset. Okay. Anything else at this time? Thank you, Rahul, for your participation and patience. Some conversations are exactly like this. Some are different.
More structured.
Uh, I'm okay. I'm okay. I think I'm
Cool.
trying to wrap around this conversation, but
Hey, me too.
I think
Don't you worry. At least we're having a deep conversation because yeah, those just not enough of those
Yeah.
take place.
I liked it. I liked it. I'll
Awesome.
be happy to join all the calls now.
Awesome. And there's a few hundred hours of previous calls here. Welcome to peruse.
Yeah. I went
Ha,
through them.
you
I'm
did.
going through one by one. Yes, I
Oh,
do.
goodness.
I've been following the calls and it's for a long time. I don't know. Maybe I go by the name. Heard about. I post some graphical contents. I don't know whether I you have seen those or not, but I post very frequently about
You go through
jazz.
what? I'm sorry. What?
I went through a lot of the calls that
Yeah. Do you do that with the
jazz.
doc open? Because the document follows them pretty closely.
Yeah. I went to the videos. I think I need to go through the documents now
I
uh,
see.
to
Okay.
get everything. Yeah.
Which, based on my experiences from the last 24 hours, suggests that if someone wants to spend the rest of their life correcting the subtitles, they're welcome to do so. But that's a horrifying notion because it's very technical language and YouTube transliteration is not so good. On that cheery note, I will take the honors of saying, please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoy these. You are also welcome
I
to.
wonder
Yes, sir.
if you
Uh-oh.
were
Here
to
comes the
use
next half
one,
hour. Yep.
you know,
Nope.
if
I
you
know
were to
you.
use one text-to-speech model to emit audio and then the same one YouTube is using to just upload a video and extract the subtitles
Mm-hmm.
for your search query, and then you basically have the same conversion mistakes potentially, and can establish basically a mapping between the terms in your search and the terms as they appear in the subtitle.
Hmm.
Basically, try a few text-to-speech models to trigger similar errors, and then just learn the terms you have to find.
Oh yeah. Well, even just ZFS, ZIL, slog, whatever, and Yan are important ones. Okay, on that note, I wish you a fantastic remainder of the day. Take care. Good night, Rahul and Yan. I'm starting my day.
Good night.
Good night.